My name is Lauren Mitchell. I am 28 years old, and for the past 4 years, I have worked as a senior project coordinator at Harrington & Co., a small but respected consulting firm tucked into a quiet business park in Franklin, Tennessee. The town itself feels like the kind of place people move to when they want space to breathe, tree-lined streets, good schools, and the kind of upscale suburban calm that makes everything look steady on the surface. I used to believe that steadiness extended to my job. I used to believe that the people I worked for actually had my back. If you have ever watched someone who holds power over your livelihood slowly rewrite your story until even you start to doubt what really happened, I hope you will stay with me. Sometimes the most painful betrayals do not come with raised voices. They come dressed in polite language and professional concern. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I arrived early, same as always, and was halfway through reviewing a client proposal when my desk phone rang. It was Diane Harrington's assistant asking me to come to the corner office immediately. Diane had been my boss since I joined the firm. She was in her early 50s, always impeccably dressed, and carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that made people straighten their posture when she entered a room. I had never had a major issue with her before. We were not friends, but we were civil. I respected her experience. I thought she respected my work. When I walked into her office, Kevin Porter from Human Resources was already sitting in one of the leather chairs across from her desk. The door clicked shut behind me with a sound that felt heavier than it should have. Diane did not smile. She gestured for me to sit, then folded her hands on the desk and looked at me with an expression I could not quite read, something between disappointment and calculation. "Lauren," she began, her voice calm and measured, "we need to talk about your recent performance and how your personal situation is affecting the team." I felt my stomach tighten. I had no idea what personal situation she was referring to. My reviews had always been strong. I had just closed 2 major client projects ahead of schedule. I asked her as steadily as I could what she meant. Diane leaned back slightly. "There have been concerns raised about your emotional stability, comments you have made in meetings, the way you have been carrying yourself. It is becoming noticeable. And when leadership is distracted, the entire department feels it." Kevin nodded in agreement, but stayed silent, letting her lead. Diane continued without waiting for me to respond. "Your mother and I spoke recently. She mentioned you have been under a great deal of stress at home. Family matters can spill over, of course, but we cannot afford for that to impact client deliverables or team morale. Some people are simply not built for the pressure that comes with greater responsibility." The words landed like small, precise cuts. She had never spoken to me this way before. There was no specific example, no documented incident, just a vague cloud of concerns and a direct reference to my mother. I tried to defend myself, calmly explaining that I had no idea what stress she was referring to and that my home life was stable. Diane's expression did not change. She simply said that perception mattered more than my explanation and that I should take some time to reflect on whether I was truly committed to the firm's values. Then she delivered what felt like the real point. "Before we consider you for the upcoming senior manager track, we need to see consistent emotional steadiness. Right now, that is not what we are seeing. I would hate for family issues to hold you back from opportunities you have earned." I left the meeting with my hands shaking so badly I had to hide them in my pockets. I walked straight past my desk, told my team I was stepping out for a moment, and sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes trying to breathe. The air felt thin. I kept replaying her words, especially the part about my mother. Why would my mother be talking to my boss about my stress? And why had Diane used that conversation to question whether I was built for more responsibility? By the time I returned to the office, the atmosphere had already shifted. 2 colleagues who usually stopped by my desk for quick questions now walked the long way around. I caught fragments of conversation near the copy machine. Something about personal problems and maybe she needs help. The rumors were moving faster than I could track them. By lunch, my inbox had a forwarded email from Kevin in HR reminding the team about the company's employee assistance program with no context but sent to the entire department. It felt deliberate. I left work early that day. When I got home, my husband Matthew was already there, having picked up our daughter Ava from school. Ava is 8, the same age my world sometimes feels too heavy for. She ran up and hugged me around the waist, then pulled back and asked why I looked sad. I told her everything was fine and sent her to play in her room. Matthew took one look at my face and led me into the kitchen. I told him everything, Diane's words, Kevin's silence, the way my coworkers had started treating me like I was fragile or contagious. I told him how small I had felt, sitting in that office like my entire professional identity was being quietly erased in front of me. Matthew listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "This is not about your performance. This is about control." He was right, but hearing it out loud did not make the ache in my chest any smaller. I felt vulnerable in a way I had not felt since I was much younger. I had always prided myself on being calm under pressure, on not letting personal matters affect my work. Now, someone with power over my future was telling a version of my life that made me sound unstable, and people were already believing it. Later that evening, after Ava was asleep, I called my mother. I kept my voice even, but inside, I was hoping she would tell me Diane had misunderstood something, that there had been a mistake. Instead, my mother sounded guarded from the first hello. When I told her what Diane had said about their conversation, she paused for a long moment. "Lauren Diane is just looking out for the company," she said, finally. "She mentioned you seemed overwhelmed the last time we spoke. I only agreed that things have been busy for you. I did not say anything that should have caused trouble." Her tone was careful, almost rehearsed. I asked her why she would discuss my stress level with my boss at all. She sighed and said that Diane had called her first concern as a friend of the family. The phrase "friend of the family" landed strangely. I had never thought of Diane as close to my parents. My mother changed the subject quickly after that, telling me I should focus on showing Diane I was fine rather than making a bigger issue out of it. I hung up feeling more unsettled than when I had dialed. Something in her voice had been off, too quick to defend Diane, too quick to downplay what had happened. I sat at the kitchen table long after the call ended, staring at the dark window. The house was quiet. Matthew had gone to bed. I kept turning the conversation over in my mind, trying to find the place where it stopped making sense. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Christopher. He worked in finance on the other side of town and rarely reached out during the week. The message was short. "Hey, found some old documents in Dad's study that might matter. Can we talk soon?" I stared at the screen. Christopher had never been the type to dig through family papers without a reason. The timing felt too precise to be coincidence. I typed back that I was free whenever he was, then set the phone face down. Outside, the streetlights cast long shadows across our quiet driveway. Everything looked the same as it had yesterday, but something fundamental had shifted, and I could not yet see the full shape of it. I did not sleep much that night. I kept seeing Diane's calm expression and hearing my mother's careful voice. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone in a situation I had not created. The rumors at work were already spreading. The ground beneath my career felt less solid with every passing hour. And the person I had always turned to for perspective, my mother, had known more than she was willing to say. The next morning, the shift in the office was impossible to ignore. Conversation stopped when I walked past the break room. My usual morning check-in with the junior analysts was met with short answers and averted eyes. One of them, a woman I had mentored for over a year, sent me a calendar invite for a quick sync that she then canceled 10 minutes later without explanation. The rumors had taken on sharper edges overnight. People were no longer just whispering about stress. Now there were quiet mentions of instability and questions about whether I could handle client-facing work without emotional outbursts. I tried to focus on my task, but every email felt like it might be the one that contained another subtle slight. Around mid-morning, my desk phone rang again. Diane's assistant. Another meeting, this time marked urgent. I walked into her office with my notebook open and my shoulders squared, determined to stay calm no matter what came next. Kevin from HR was already there, again sitting slightly behind Diane as if he were there only to witness. Diane did not waste time with pleasantries. She looked at me across the desk and said, "Lauren, we have received additional feedback that your behavior is creating a hostile environment for your colleagues. Several team members have expressed concern that your personal difficulties are making it difficult for them to do their jobs effectively." I asked her, keeping my voice steady, to tell me exactly what behavior she was referring to. She gave me a small, pitying smile that made my stomach turn. "It is not about any single incident," she said. "It is the overall impression. You seem fragile. People are walking on eggshells around you. That is not the kind of leadership presence we need if you want to move forward here." Then she leaned forward slightly and her tone changed. It became softer, almost maternal, which somehow made the words cut deeper. "Your mother and I have known each other a long time. She has always spoken so highly of you. I would hate to see her disappointment if things do not work out for you professionally because of choices you are making at home. Sometimes the kindest thing a company can do is help someone recognize when they are not ready for more." I felt the blood drain from my face. She was using my mother's name like a weapon, implying that my own family agreed I was the problem. Kevin cleared his throat and added that the company had an obligation to protect the team culture. He slid a piece of paper across the desk in acknowledgement form, stating that I had been counseled about performance concerns and that I understood the firm's expectations around emotional professionalism. Signing it was presented as a routine step, but the implication was clear refuse, and the next conversation would be about separation. I did not sign it. I told them I needed time to review the document and left the office before either of them could respond. My hands were shaking again, but this time the shaking came with a new, colder clarity. This was not a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. My boss was systematically dismantling my reputation inside the company, and she was doing it with my mother's name in her mouth. By the end of the day, the isolation was complete. An important client call I had prepared for was reassigned to someone else without explanation. When I asked my direct team lead about it, he looked uncomfortable and said it had come from higher up. I ate lunch alone at my desk. No one stopped by. The silence was louder than any accusation. That evening, after I put Ava to bed and read her the same 3 books she always chose, I sat on the edge of her bed longer than usual. She reached up and touched my cheek with her small hand. "Mommy, are you okay?" she asked. I told her I was just tired. She accepted the answer. The way children do when they sense the truth is heavier than they can carry. I kissed her forehead and turned off the light, then stood in the hallway for a long moment with my back against the wall, trying not to cry where she might hear me. Later, when Matthew got home from a late meeting, I told him what had happened in Diane's office. He listened the way he always did, quietly, fully present. When I finished, he said, "You do not have to sign anything that feels like a trap. We will figure this out together." His steadiness helped be, but could not erase the deeper wound. My own mother had apparently given Diane permission to use her name against me. The next afternoon, my brother Christopher called and asked if I could meet him after work at a small coffee shop near his office. He sounded tense in a way I rarely heard from him. I agreed. When I arrived, he was already at a corner table with a plain manila folder in front of him. He did not waste time with small talk. I was helping Dad go through some old files last weekend, he said, keeping his voice low. I found these. They were in a drawer he does not usually open. I think you need to see them. He slid the folder across the table. Inside were printed emails and a few scanned financial summaries. The emails were between Diane and my mother dating back almost 2 years. In one, Diane wrote that she was concerned about Lauren's long-term fit and suggested that keeping me in a mid-level role would be safer for everyone. My mother had replied that she agreed it was important to manage my expectations and that she would help reinforce the message at home. Another exchange referenced a family investment account that Diane's firm managed. The language was careful, but the implication was unmistakable. If I stayed compliant and did not push for advancement or ask too many questions, certain financial arrangements that had been discussed as future support for me would remain in place. If I became difficult, those arrangements could be revisited. Christopher watched my face as I read. I did not know any of this, he said quietly. Dad did not either, I am pretty sure. I only found them because I was looking for something else. Mom never mentioned any of it to me. I closed the folder. My chest felt tight in a way that made breathing difficult. The fake inheritance promise my mother had hinted at over the years, the idea that staying loyal to the family's business connections would eventually bring security for Ava and me was not a promise at all. It had been a leash, and Diane had been holding the other end of it with my mother's full knowledge. I thanked Christopher and drove home in a daze. The documents sat on the passenger seat like something radioactive. When I pulled into our driveway, I did not go inside right away. I sat in the car with the engine off the folder in my lap and let the full weight of it settle. My mother had known. She had known for years that Diane was managing my career downward and had helped do it. The same woman who had raised me to believe that family always came first had been quietly trading my future for whatever arrangement benefited her and Diane. That night after Matthew fell asleep, I went into our home office and opened my laptop. I created a new folder on an encrypted drive and scanned the documents Christopher had given me. I also started a simple log dates, times, and exact words from every conversation with Diane and Kevin. It felt small and almost pointless at first, but doing something concrete helped steady my hands. The following morning, my colleague Jennifer Walsh stopped by my desk on her way to the printer. Jennifer and I had worked together on a few projects, but had never been particularly close. She leaned down and spoke quietly. I do not know what is going on, she said, but I've noticed how people are treating you. If you ever need someone to talk to who is not going to run to HR, I am here. And I started keeping my own notes after that last meeting you had with Diane, just in case. I looked up at her. There was no pity in her expression, only quiet solidarity. I thanked her and told her I might take her up on that soon. She nodded once and walked away. For the first time in days, I felt a small flicker of something that was not fear or shame. Someone else had seen it too. That afternoon, Diane sent me a calendar invite for first thing the next morning. The subject line read simply, follow-up discussion. Required attendant. No agenda, no explanation. I accepted it, then closed my laptop and sat at my desk until the office emptied out. The building grew quiet around me. I thought about the folder in my bag, the log I had started, and Jennifer's offer. I thought about Ava asking if I was okay, and the way my mother's voice had sounded on the phone, careful, rehearsed, already choosing sides. I did not know yet what I was going to do, but I knew I could not keep pretending this was something I could smooth over with better performance or a calmer demeanor. The ground had already shifted too far, and the person who was supposed to catch me if I fell had helped push me instead. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual and went straight to Diane's corner office without waiting for a summons. Kevin was already there, sitting in the same chair as before, his expression carefully neutral. Diane looked up from her computer with the same calm, measured smile she had worn the first time she summoned me. Lauren, she said, I am glad you are taking this seriously. We need to resolve the concerns about your fit here before they affect the entire team any further. I remained standing. There are no concerns about my fit, I said. There is only a campaign to make me look unstable, so I will not ask for the opportunities I have earned. I have the documentation to prove it. Diane smiled thin. Documentation of what exactly? Your own emotional reactions. I placed the folder Christopher had given me on her desk along with the printed log I had kept since the first meeting. This is correspondence between you and my mother discussing how to keep me from advancing. This is a record of every conversation you and Kevin have had with me about my supposed instability. And this, I said, sliding a small USB drive across the polished wood, is footage from meetings you thought were private. Jennifer Walsh had recorded the last two conversations on her phone, placed discreetly on a shelf during what looked like casual visits to my desk area. The audio was clear. Diane's voice came through unmistakably, using my mother's name to undermine me, framing normal, professional pushback as emotional fragility. Kevin's supporting comments were there too. Diane's face did not change much, but her hands resting on the desk went very still. Kevin shifted in his chair and would not meet my eyes. I told them I had already sent copies of everything to the company's general counsel and to an employment attorney. Then I turned and walked out. Before either of them could speak, the investigation moved faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, Diane was placed on administrative leave pending review. Kevin was reassigned to another department with a formal reprimand in his file. The official complaint I filed, supported by the hidden camera footage, Christopher's documents, and my own detailed log, made it impossible for leadership to dismiss what had happened as a personality conflict. Several colleagues, including Jennifer and Thomas Reed, came forward during the review and confirmed the pattern of isolation and whispered rumors that had followed me after the first meeting. I was offered a settlement that included a neutral reference, a modest severance, and a statement clearing my record of any performance issues. I took it, not because I wanted to run, but because staying in that building would have required me to keep breathing the same air as the people who had tried to rewrite my story. I chose the version of my life where I did not have to prove my stability every single day. The hardest conversation came 3 days later. I drove to my parents' house in the late afternoon, the same manila folder and USB in my bag. My father answered the door. He looked surprised to see me, but stepped aside without asking why I had come. My mother was in the kitchen. She dried her hands on a towel when she saw me and tried to smile. I did not smile back. I placed the folder and drive on the counter between us and told her what I had learned. I told her about the emails, about the way she had helped Diane manage my expectations downward, about the financial arrangement that had been dangled like a promise but used like a chain. I asked her as calmly as I could manage how long she had known. She did not deny it. She looked at the papers for a long moment, then at me. Diane has always been good to this family, she said finally. She manages things that benefit all of us. I thought if you stayed where you were, everyone would be safer, including you. The words landed with the weight of years. She had known the entire scheme. She had chosen the arrangement over her own daughter's future and had helped enforce it. I felt something small and essential inside me settle into place. Not anger exactly, something quieter and more final. I am done, I told her. I will not be managed for anyone's comfort anymore. I will not let Ava grow up watching me shrink myself to keep peace that was never real. If you cannot respect that boundary, then we do not have a relationship. My father started to speak, but I shook my head. I had already said what needed saying. I picked up the folder, left the USB on the counter, and walked out. My mother did not follow me to the door. When I reached my car, I blocked both of their numbers before I started the engine. In the weeks that followed, the quiet closure I had not known I needed began to take shape. I accepted a role at a smaller firm across town where my work was judged on results instead of rumors. The pay was slightly less, but the air felt cleaner. Ava noticed the difference almost immediately. The tension that had lived in our house for those weeks eased. She stopped asking if I was okay every evening. Matthew and I started taking evening walks again, the three of us, without the weight of unspoken dread. There are still moments when the loss surfaces. I will see a mother and daughter laughing together in a store and feel the sharp private ache of what my own mother chose. The tension does not vanish completely. It lingers in quiet corners, a reminder that some betrayals do not come with dramatic endings. They come with the slow, deliberate realization that the person you trusted most had been protecting someone else's power instead of your peace. I have learned that boundaries are not cruel. They are the clearest way we tell the people we love and the people who claim to love us what we will no longer accept. Choosing myself did not feel like victory. It felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for too long. My daughter still has her mother whole. My husband still has a partner who does not disappear into other people's expectations. And I have something I did not know. I was missing the quiet certainty that I am allowed to protect my own life, even when it costs me the approval I once craved. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. If you were standing where I stood, would you walk away?